This has been a rowdy crowd today, but it's been very enjoyable. And I am very pleased and very appreciative, John, to have you as our guest today. John Hayes, who is the chairman, CEO, and president of Ball Corporation. A few facts and background on the company. Ball Corporation is one of only 10 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Colorado, with a 2018 rank of 277. And among the 500 and ranking 5th among the 10 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Colorado. Headquartered in Broomfield, just down the road a piece, Ball is best known for its early production of glass jars, lids, and related products used for home canning. Today, it is the world's largest manufacturer of recyclable metal beverage and food containers with revenues of $11 billion. Ball Aerospace, well known to us Coloradans, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Ball Corporation. Ball moved to Broomfield from Muncie, Indiana in 1998, I believe. And John, I think you joined the company about a year later, 1999. He became CEO in January of 2011, succeeding our own Dave Hoover in that role, and then also became chairman in 2013. He currently is on or has served on boards of several corporations and industry associations. He is currently a trustee at Colgate University and has served on the board of directors of the Leeds School of Business here at CU. Ball Corporation has made a very strong commitment to sustainability, and today we can look forward to learning much more about that and about this remarkable company in John's talk entitled Plastic or Planet, the Role of Ball in the Beverage Can in the Plastic Pollution Crisis. John, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. I was originally going to just stand and kind of walk around and make it a little bit more informal, but then I realized I'd probably fall off the stage, so I thought it was probably best that I not do that. Paul, thank you. It was very kind, not only for the introduction, but the invitation to join you all today. I've been in Colorado since early 1999. As Paul had mentioned, my person who hired me, my mentor, my predecessor, Dave Hoover, is here, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know he was coming today, which is kind of neat. So he's going to keep me honest as well. Paul had talked a little bit about, and maybe if I could just kind of get here we go. Okay. Just get it a little bit going. Just a quick history about Ball, just to level set all of us and provide some context. We're proud to work for a company that's almost 140 years young. Ball was founded in Muncie, Indiana, as Paul had mentioned. We moved out here in 1998. A quick funny story. I was actually, at the time, a service provider to Ball, and Dave Hoover was the CFO at the time. And I'd been trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. I still am, by the way. But trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I had a meeting with him at our new offices in Broomfield, Colorado. And he invited me out to lunch and just hopped in his car, and out of the blue, I said, Dave, I've been thinking about doing some other things in my life, and I really do believe in the values and the people of Ball Corporation. And if you all have an interest in any openings, I'd love to throw my hat into the ring. To which he turned to me and said, why do you think I invited you to lunch? And so 20 years later, here we are, which is kind of neat. But we've been in 46 different businesses in that 140 years. We've made penny blanks for the U.S. government. We made television picture tubes. We actually made prefabricated housing. We're best known for the glass business, which we actually got out of in the mid-1990s. But today, as we go forward, we're in effectively 3 product lines. First, and our biggest, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, is our beverage can business. Just to give you a sense of the scale, we make 300 million beverage cans around the world per day. Nearly 100 billion actually more than 100 billion beverage cans per year. And so it truly is a scale business. We have another business that was up until about a month ago, we called it our food and aerosol business. We actually, a few weeks ago, we closed on a transaction where we joint ventured our tin plate food can business. So I won't talk about that, but we are all in the aluminum aerosol business as well. So when you think about high-end hairsprays and body sprays and all those, we do that. We're the leader in that as well. And then, as most of you know, we're also in the aerospace business. Our aerospace business is our smallest business, but when you live here in Colorado, everyone thinks that it's our biggest business. I always like to joke. People say, well, you must be an engineer. Ball Aerospace, you live in Boulder. And I was an English lit major. So enough of that. we service on the beverage can side, every major customer. Almost 4 out of every 10 beverage cans in the world are made by Ball Corporation today. And so it's very neat from that perspective. Back when I became CEO in the beginning of 2011, it was daunting. It was daunting because I took over from a predecessor. In the prior decade, we had doubled our sales. We'd quadrupled our profits. Our stock price had gone up 500% during the time. And we all sat in a room as a new management team and said, how in the heck are we going to replicate over the next 10 years what we've done in the prior 10 years? And that really drove what we call our Drive for 10 vision. And I won't go into it, but I think the most important thing for you all to take out of this is the bedrock of it is the 140-year history of who we are as Ball Corporation. Many of you, but not all of you, know a little bit about Ball, but we take great pride that we try and be great stewards in the communities in which we live, of the products that we make, and of the people that we employ. And so that's the bedrock from what we did. And so what I'd like to do today is talk about something that many of you know of, but you don't really know exactly what Ball's doing in this. And it's about sustainability, and it's about plastic pollution in our world today. As we sit here today, there are 5 gyres, as they're called, in various oceans around the world, all the size of Texas, and it is swirling plastic. We are drowning in plastic. In fact, since the beginning of mankind, over 80% of plastic ever made has been used once. There's a lot of misperceptions that it's a fully recyclable, and it's not. Beverage cans, on the other hand, are infinitely recyclable. We call it a circular economy, where it's within 60 days of recycling a beverage can, 100% of that can go right back into making another beverage can. Over 75% of all the aluminum ever produced in the history of mankind is still in use today because of that. And we face a crisis as society. We face a crisis because anywhere you look, whether it's in the oceans, whether it's on our streets, wherever you go, you see plastic pollution everywhere. And we are right now, and probably, to use a baseball analogy, in the 3rd or 4th inning of the world waking up to the problem that we're being faced today with the lack of recyclability about it. It's, as I mentioned before, it's polluting our oceans, and the biggest problem with plastic today is it is recyclable, but it costs to recycle. So as opposed to aluminum, where actually there, because of the scrap value of it, it's much cheaper and it's actually economical to recycle. And I say this because, here in Boulder, it's, that we have a much higher sense of duty relative to the whole sustainability, but it's gaining a groundswell around the world today. And just to give you context, in London about 6 months ago, the Coca-Cola company, a very important and dear customer of ours, woke up to have their front entrance of their European headquarters blocked by a 2-ton bronze statue from Greenpeace that showed pelicans throwing up plastic. And if that didn't catch people's attention, I don't know what will. You can go and you can set up a Google alert about plastic pollution, and you'll probably get about 20 articles a day. And I'm not only talking from scientific publications, but you'll see in the USA Today, you'll see the Wall Street Journal, you'll see the Financial Times, and so on and so forth, about the problems that we are facing today. There is a solution, however, and that is the aluminum beverage can. I'd mentioned earlier we've been in 46 different businesses. We were in the plastic business, actually 3 different times in that lifetime. We got out of it most recently in late 2010, and I looked at Dave because he and I were co-conspirators of this. The truth be told is we could not make economic returns in the business. But equally importantly, if not more importantly, as we looked ahead, we could see the tsunami of greenwashing, where people think plastic is recyclable, and it's not. It's collected, but don't confuse collection with recycling. Even here in Boulder, when you put your recyclables in your bin and put it out on your front, you'll put glass, you'll put plastic, you'll put aluminum, and you'll put steel. That plastic that's in there is not recycled. It's put into the landfill. So think about us as consumers. We're trying to do the right thing, and there's no economic incentive for these waste management companies to recycle plastic. And so what they do is they go and they'll pull the aluminum out, they'll sell it at a value, make money off that. Glass is roughly a wash, and they'll throw the plastic in the landfill. And most people don't know this. We think of good stewards that we're putting it in, we're doing our civic duty, and the reality is it's getting the issue worse and worse and worse. In fact, it's been surmised that within 20 years, there will be more pounds of plastic than there are fish in our oceans. So when you stop and think about the issues we're facing today, we have to figure out how to achieve this issue and solve this issue. And so at Ball Corporation, yes, I will not hide from this. It's in our economic best interest. We're the world's largest aluminum beverage can maker. But at the same time, one of the reasons is because we've been around for 140 years. We were in the glass business and got out of it. We were in the plastic business and got out of it. And we've doubled and tripled down in the aluminum beverage can because of its infinite recyclability. And you're going to hear from our company and from our industry over the coming weeks, months, and years, the import of this. Because as a human society, if we keep along the trajectory that we have going, and we can talk about global warming, we can talk about everything, but I'm talking about litter here. And when you go to a beach, at an ocean, and you go up to where the water hits the sand, and you look down, and you see more micro shards of plastic at times than you do see sand, that's a problem. And it's infiltrating our aquatic life, and we have to do something about it. And what we as Ball have taken the challenge on, that something is about providing something that's infinitely recyclable, which is the aluminum beverage can. There's some statistics I won't up there that I won't necessarily go into, but it really talks about the import and value of recycling in aluminum, that we're able to save 95% of all electricity used in making aluminum by recycling it. There is no loss in that recycling, so that literally you can take an aluminum beverage can, recycle it, and with 60 days, you're drinking another aluminum beverage can container with the exact same metal in it. It's the most efficient. And so we've been pushing, and I won't go through this, I talked a lot about this beyond, but I wanted to focus on this. Over the last couple of years, and as part of this drive for 10 vision I talked about, and taking our corporate responsibility very, very seriously, we've been working with our customers. And on the Boulder Beer Trail, I certainly hope that you're going to be drinking out of infinitely recyclable aluminum cans. But there's a great story here, and I looked at Dave because he was a key architect of it. In the craft beer industry right now, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you did not see one can in the craft beer industry. You know who the first one? Dale's Pale Ale up in Longmont, Oscar Blues. We had partnered with them. They've never been in a bottle. And they started a trend that truly has transformed our industry and changed it, because back when we were growing up, the can was viewed as very pedestrian. We would do anything that our customers wanted, so long as a standard 12-ounce can, and so long as we could print no more than 6 colors on it. Today, we make 32 different sizes in the United States alone. United States alone, let alone what we do in South America as well as Europe. That Dale's Pale Ale has turned into, we have over 600 customers, craft customers in the United States alone. And they're using 11 different sizes in the United States alone. And we're selling over 3 billion units to them from zero, not 12 years ago. I say that because as you look out as consumers, and today, right now, the hot trend is sparkling water. 5 years ago, you barely saw any sparkling water, let alone sparkling water in cans. It's a 3 billion can category, led a lot by LaCroix, but there's many others that are getting into it. And we've been putting, from a new market development perspective and a sustainability perspective, putting our messages out there. And on the far right, you'll see a chart there that shows that today, over half of all new beverage products going out into the shelves today are in a can. 10 years ago, that was probably 5% maximum. And so we've been able to help shape this. Why? Because it's good for society, it's good for our consumers, it's good for our customers, and candidly, it's good for Ball Corporation. But you're going to see a lot more of that. And as you see these new categories coming out, cold coffees is another one that's hot. And just wait, people laugh when I say this, but I guarantee in 3 years, every one of you will have wine in a can in your pantry at home. You're seeing a marked spike up because of the infinite recyclability of cans relative to the other substrates we have. So I could go on and on. I know I'm on my soapbox a little bit, but I do think this is very important for our society to understand that the trajectory that we're on in terms of, as consumers, what we drink, what we eat, and what we do with the packaging around it directly affects not only our generation today, but our children's generation. And it's quite encouraging to see the millennial generation understanding this far better, certainly than my generation. Far better than my generation. And as we move forward, you're going to hear a lot more in the public domain about Ball Corporation trying to be a good corporate steward for the world in which we live by making sure we're not polluting our planet with plastic that is at an unsustainable rate. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions. Yes?
With your tremendous economic power and the user's power, why don't we hear these commercials every day? I mean, it's such a strong message. You really have inspired me to move on that. But I look at who your customers are. Why can't you get manufacturers and customers to unite and bury these other containers?
It's a great customer. It's a great question. I mentioned earlier that we will not hide from the fact that this is in our economic best interest. When we talk about sustainability, we use three approaches. First, economic. If you're not making economic returns, you're not in business long term, so that's not sustainable. Number two, which is very important here in Boulder, is a social sustainability. We want to be the best stewards in the communities in which we live and operate. And the third one is the environmental sustainability, which I just talked about. When you look at the soft drink companies, and I won't mention who, we all know as consumers, we can go to a grocery store and buy a 12-pack of your favorite soda, and it's going to cost $3 for a 12-pack. So you do the math, you know, that's a little under 30 cents a container. Then we go into the 7-Eleven and buy a 20-ounce PET bottle for $1.29. The cost of goods sold of a can versus a PET bottle is not all that different. So if they're selling a can for 30 cents and they're selling a PET bottle for $1.29, it's not in their economic best interest. We, as Ball, one of the reasons why we're making 32 different sizes is we need to help those customers reposition it so they can improve the profitability, the profit pools as we call it, in their products. And so a great proof point of that is, remember earlier this year, Coca-Cola relaunched Diet Coke, and they put some flavors in it, and it was all in a totally different aluminum beverage can. And for the first time in a decade, Coca-Cola led with aluminum advertising. Aluminum package advertising on television. If you remember the Super Bowl ads, you saw it all throughout print. You saw it big on the internet. And so that's the reason why, is because right now in the short term, it's in their economic best interest to keep pushing the plastic because they make more money doing that. We, as their supplier, have an obligation to improve their profit pool, but at the same time, there's a tsunami coming in, whether it's government legislation, whether it's NGOs, the Greenpeace story I told you about, or us as consumers demanding that we are not going to do that. And so there is, you know, nothing changes overnight, but you are starting to see these shifts occur. But you have to, and we recognize that we have to make sure that our customers are economically viable as well. And just to shift from plastic to aluminum overnight, they would lose a lot of profits. That's just the truth. Yes. I'm sorry?
I've not heard your message.
Yeah. We have not, as an industry, we have not done a good enough job. We're humble, and we remain humble about this, but you have to get the message out there, because as stewards of our society, of our planet, we have to be doing that. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea. I actually literally spent the whole morning sitting. We have a steering committee that kind of is driving all this. And one of the things we talked about from a communication point of view is getting that messaging correct so people understand it and everyone can understand it, not just sophisticated people that are focused on the environment. But then how do we get it out, and how do we create coalitions? And as I said, we as Ball Corporation don't have the armies to do this, so we need to create the armies. And your suggestion, it could be a very good one. I'll definitely follow up on that. Yes.
About an end-to-end life cycle rating, you know, something along those lines that could be cross products, not just beverage.
Yeah. Well, keep going for a second. I'm not sure I completely understand.
Well, wood, for example,
Uh-huh.
is not entirely recyclable if you treat it with
Right.
CCA.
Right.
It becomes something you can't burn, you can't recycle, it goes in the dump.
Yep.
Every product, though, has some percentage of true end-to-end life cyclability.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a certification board that rated that, you could stamp a hologram with your number on a product. It would be a representation of its full end-to-end recyclability.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Here in the United States, we don't see that because these issues are dealt with at the state level. So it's not like we can go to the federal government and talk about something like that. You have to go to 50 different states. And sometimes they even delegate it down to the municipality level. So then you're talking 3,000 municipalities. And, you know, I'd spend my whole lifetime trying to coalesce around that. In other places, Europe is a great example. The EU, about 3 months ago, put out a packaging mandate that addresses directly your issue. You know, for example, along those points, Tetra Pak, people always view that as a very environmentally conscious container. It's not recyclable. It's got both plastic and paper in it, so you can't separate the two. Even on these biodegradable cups that you see, people don't realize 30% of that's biodegradable. The other 70% is plastic that's just going to sit in the ground there. And so there's a lot of education that needs to go on about that, and that's what we're trying to do. Yes?
The presence of this mass amount of plastic, right? Take that plastic.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a difficult one. You know, one of the problems is we talk about plastic as if it's just one. There are so many different monomers and different types of plastic out there that are mutually exclusive of each other, and so it's a very complicated question because it's not just single-serve beverage containers. It's also straws, which actually state of Washington banned straws about 2 months ago. Even Starbucks, I think on a national basis, you know, all the stoppers that they have are pulling those stoppers because they're made of plastic. And so it's a very difficult question. There is a lot of work going on. And one of the beauties about free economies is if there's an issue, there's opportunity to solve that issue. And I know there's a lot of various companies working on it. Incineration is one. People don't realize all plastic is oil-based. You know, there's no reason if you can incinerate that and actually capture the gases and make sure that so you're being sustainable from that perspective. The problem is the collection side of it, and is the cost of collecting. It's not worth doing at this point in time because there's no value in that. So it's a difficult question. Yes.
Who produces the aluminum that you use in your production?
Yeah. Well, there's it goes. It's a great question. It's complicated, but you start with the mining of aluminum. Those are the Rio Tintos of the world and the big mining companies. We need to work with that because I will tell you that is not sustainable as well because they're scraping earth, and we've been working with them on that. But then it goes into aluminum smelters, and most of aluminum smelters, and it gets right into, you've heard of all these tariffs of aluminum and steel. It's kind of, I think I spent May and June in Washington, D.C. dealing with this, but most of the aluminum made is used with hydroelectricity because it's very energy intensive, but with hydro it becomes very low cost. Then that's called ingot, and then we take it to our suppliers, our direct suppliers, which are companies like Alcoa, like Novelis, a couple of others, Constellium, and they actually take the raw ingot and roll it in the big sheets. Then we buy those sheets from them and then stamp out the aluminum containers that you see today. So it's a very broad-based and complicated supply chain. And one of the things that we have to do, I mentioned earlier that a recycled container saves 95% of the energy. It's great that the primary aluminum is using hydro. because they're not using carbon. But at the same time, the more that we can recycle, and the aluminum beverage can around the world, 75% of all aluminum is recycled today and collected on a regular basis. Here in the United States, it's 55%. So that means many other places doing much better than us. We have an obligation to do it, and it's the right thing to do, and it's a good thing to do as well. Yes?
So if you were to convert the plastic beverages into aluminum, how much of that new market would be supplied by recycling versus newly mined and energy-intensive production?
There are two binary and separate questions that you're asking. The first, we have to focus on this recycling. And actually, we've been doing a very effective job, except honestly here in the States. You know, you go to places like Brazil, 98% recycling. You go in places in parts of Europe, and you'll see almost 100% recycling. Like I said, here in the United States, it's 55%. There are 12 states in the United States that have deposit laws. The recycling there, surprise, surprise, close to 90%. And so it varies. So that one of the issues is we as consumers, we have a high-class problem in America, where as a kid, I remember, as a kid, I used to go and collect cans, and we'd get paid a penny a can. I joked with my son, who's an 18-year-old son, last summer. I said, why don't you, instead of getting a job, why don't you go collect cans? He said, Dad, I'd have to collect 1,000 cans an hour just to make minimum wage. So when you go to India and you go to Brazil and you even go to China and Southeast Asia, that's meaningful to them, but we have a high-class problem because it's not nearly as meaningful to us. And so we got to create the systems, and we are actively involved with government discussions at the federal and state and local level about everything from producer responsibility to deposits and other things as well. Yes?
You say that the plastic that we put in our recycle bins is not being recycled. It's probably surprising to a lot of people here. It's somewhat shocking to me. Why are they collecting it in our recycle bins but not holding it recycling?
The plastic is a very volatile. Sometimes they recycle it, sometimes they don't, depending on the cost. In reality, what happens here in Boulder, we'll put it in, and then at the waste management facility, they'll separate it, and then there are markets where they will sell these. And you know, up until December of last year, they would more often than not sell that to someone, and it ultimately ended up in China. China, at the end of December last year, implemented the golden sword, as it's called, and they said, no, we're no longer going to be the repository of the world's waste, and we're not buying any more scrap. Because what they do is, we talk about a circular economy where a can goes to a can. What happens is you can take plastic and downgrade it, make it into a synthetic fiber that goes into carpeting. But at some point in time, that all ends. But in today's world right now, people are not, the spot market for plastic is effectively zero. So, yes?
What percentage of the market now is aluminum versus plastic and glass? The more we decide that we convert everything, it's not sustainable.
Well, number one, we couldn't do that overnight because there just isn't enough capacity, but it never would happen overnight because we would have to change behaviors, and those don't happen overnight. Yeah, 40% of all on a literage basis, because you get 2-liter PET bottles, and is that one or is that multiple? But 40% of all literage is in cans and 60% is PET in the United States. Many other places very different. But on the soft drink side, in here in the United States, plastic doesn't really play on the alcoholic side, on the beer side, but actually there 60% on the beer side, 60% of all packaged beer is in cans today.
Well, John, I don't know if this is on. It is? So you can hear me. We often say here that we get the last word, and with you and I, it's been hard for me to do, but I'm delighted you're here. I love this story. As you know, we go back a long way in this. And in your honor, we thank you for being here today. We're going to donate 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund, trying to eradicate polio in the world.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.